The following is intended for a mature audience. Proceed with the understanding that taboo and offensive material will be discussed. The revolution must be non-violent, and it must occur in our minds, thus being the evolution we need to survive. The Evolution Revolution Podcast.
Okay, so this is the Evolution Revolution podcast on IMN. I am here with Kirk Mayhew. Is that right?
Yeah, Mayhew.
Mayhew.
Close enough.
Okay, and he's a former senator of Trinidad and Tobago.
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 Trinidad and Tobago. It's two islands, yeah, as one country.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. And it's right next to Venezuela, or close to Venezuela, right?
Yeah. We're just 7 miles from Venezuela. We have received the largest influx of refugees per capita in the world. It's a major issue for us. Yeah.
Oh, well, hopefully we can get into that. You already proposed an idea to really guide the show.
Yeah.
If you can lament about that, that'd be spectacular.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of topics I've been talking about over the years in my career and whatnot, but something that has been guiding it for a very long time, and it seems, and it's amazing that it's dovetailing more and more with different people all around the world, is that this whole idea of the right and the left, it really undermines the solidarity that is needed to fight underdevelopment, this perpetual war, and global corporatism. These, and we're seeing it in the past few years. The Trump ascension, if you want to put it that way, in 2016, I think really brought it home very sharply. And it shows that, we've got to throw away these labels because it's part of the divide and rule strategy. Like, for instance, right now, just yesterday, and it's amazing that I gave you this topic and I didn't even find out what Trump had announced, because right after I told you about it, then he announced a pullout from Syria, and the entire establishment within a nanosecond, as if they had everything queued up already. Everybody from Ben Shapiro on the right to whoever, I don't know, PragerU, or everybody on the right, Mitch McConnell, everybody on the left, Hillary Clinton, and
it's like they were all coming to the defense of ISIS or ISIS.
That's right. Exact same script as well. They did not differ one iota, and it's like, so as Pat Buchanan in the States, calls them the war party, the uniparty. It's they revealed themselves, and the whole illusion of right and left just disappeared when, oh my God, we're going to pull out of a war, and the same thing occurs with development policies, corporatism, IMF, World Bank, this sort of stuff. That's of course, and those things have been, real concerns to us in the so-called third world, even when I look at the left up in America, and let's say the LGBTQ movement, and then, they have their pride parades, and it's all like Starbucks and I don't know, the Lehman Brothers, and I mean the biggest corporations in the whole world are endorsing you. You are no longer part of any resistance. You are part of the corporate agenda. And this right and left stuff is just a way to divide people who really believe in the same things. Because it's amazing when you see people on the ground, on the left and on the right, who are against corporate control of their lives, who are against big government, who are against the hollowing out of the middle class, who are against corporations ruling everything, but they're fighting each other because of some peripheral sort of issues, and
That's what
And
they that's what they want. I mean,
exactly.
that's the design of it all.
That's right.
There's nowhere to go, where you can feel um, like the basic conversation is based off merit or truth of processing some of this information. I completely agree, and what I'm seeing is that they'll attach anything to Trump that they can that they don't like. So anything
That's right.
that possibly good, because a broken clock is right two
Yeah,
times a day.
that's right.
So anything like that's like the whole thing with Clinton. Clinton's corrupt. They obviously should be put in jail, but they try to attach it to Trump as if it's Trump's the one that's saying it. So it takes the wind out of certain sails. And like you say, it is when it's co-opted by these big banks, by the people that you're supposed to be fighting, then it takes the validity out of what you're doing, and a lot of people can't get behind it. It's like the Goodwill or the Red Cross. The idea is good, but it's the people running it and how it's being ran, where the resources, where the money's going, which is the big problem. Everything, it's the money. That's the illusion, because so the money can be distributed where they want it.
And
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Go on.
But
No?
like, okay, and currently, Chad over here is he's seeking the Green Party's presidential nomination. There's a lot of candidates for the presidential nomination, a lot.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
But,
good luck to you, Chad.
Thank you.
And that's the point that he's been bringing up a lot. But
And it's because nobody has a place to go to have these conversations. And if we're real about the propaganda, which basically makes you think left, right, it's a football game.
That's right.
You're voting against someone rather than for something. It's like the Super Bowl. You're going against the team most of the time. If it's not your team, you're just being against the other team.
That's exactly. And they use special words: fascist, anarchist, communist, white nationalist, racist, whatever. So they use these trigger words. Oh my God, I can never be with a racist. Oh my God, I can never be with a white nationalist. Oh my God. And so they have you, oh, well, maybe I'm against the war in Syria, but I can never be with, whatever. And
because Trump's, it's like I can't be anti-war because Trump's anti-war.
exactly.
And the left is like, the minds are blowing up because if it were opposite, they'd be against it.
That's right.
Which I think it's interesting because in one way, the right or Trump supporters see propaganda in real time, just like the Bernie supporters did during the 2016 election. So there's a cognitive dissonance, though, when it comes to the things that they're being propagandized.
Yeah.
So on both sides, but that's the thing, is like both sides in that two-party mentality. You have to pick a side off a wedge issue, boilerplate issue. You're only
right.
given a few things to choose from. To make you pick a side. So, and then you have to hold your nose because you're against the other guy so much, even if they're doing the same dirt.
Exactly. And then you end up choosing somebody who's just for the corporatist agenda anyways, because, they'll all say whatever you like. And then in the end, they're all voting for the same thing. They're all bought off by APAC or whatever. And it's just the same.
Insert corporation here.
Exactly.
Because it's all a slush fund, and that's because what the GE owns the media, which they own.
That's right.
Weapons manufacturing. So that's why see it's always pro-war. The only time they actually on the liberal media when they praise Trump has to do with war.
Exactly.
Selling weapons, like certain things. So it's like so obvious that it's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And I mean, from sort of my perspective to sort of to shed some light on this, because I know in American politics it's very insular, which is fine because it's the biggest economy in the world and sets the agenda. But like in when our countries became independent in the big decolonization movements of the 50s, 60s, and then later on 70s, there was a movement here called the New World Movement, which I'm a part of. And, the Cold War was big then. And then a lot of countries were kind of choosing, well, should we be in the capitalist camp or should we be in the communist camp? And there was this amazing intellectual here who was really my mentor. He's deceased now. And his name is Lloyd Best. and he wrote a piece called Independent Thought and Caribbean Freedom. And that's where my podcast name comes from, Independent Thought and Freedom, just kind of globalizing it. But basically he said, listen, you see this left and right battle, that has nothing to do with us. If we decide to go into, you know, the Western camp or the Eastern camp, they're just going to use us, and they don't care one bit about us. We have to think for ourselves, formulate policies for ourselves, and forge our own path, instead of saying, oh, well, we're going to follow the communist path or we're going to follow the capitalist path. It's being independent. And so that's been an agenda, not only in the Caribbean and the West Indies, but you find these similar types of thinking throughout Africa, Asia, Latin America, among, you know, the independence generation and afterwards, and those influenced by it. I'm like maybe one generation after the independence generation here. And so you know, so we've, you know, always been super critical of the CIA and the FBI and all the stuff they've done in our countries, and subverted governments and run arms and drugs and all this kind of stuff. And then to see Trump in 2016, not even just to see any candidate on a US presidential stage calling out Jeb Bush, saying your brother lied and we have blood on our hands, and the FBI, I could not believe I saw that in my lifetime. You know, I just, you know, I knew Trump since the 80s, you know, as a real estate mogul and whatever on David Letterman, and I never liked him or anything like that.
There's an interesting.
I loved him.
I'm sorry, but there's an interesting timeline, because you had Cynthia on your show. I've been taking a deep. Okay, this is his show. I've been watching a lot of it. You have a very, very decent. I love your show.
Thank you.
You were the topic is, you know, left, right. You know, how seeing past. You know, us seeing past that as humans, and there's an interesting timeline so far that I've just been observing, because you had Cynthia on your podcast. We had a scheduled day. We'll see what works. She's a busy woman, I'm sure. So something just probably just got thrown at her face. But so it basically goes. So like I never watched Bill Maher, but Woody Harrelson was on an interview with Bill Maher, and he told Bill Maher that Trump wanted Jesse Ventura for a Democrat ticket, for the 2004 Democrat ticket. And it's political alliances confused the hell out of me, because then in 2016, you know, Jesse wanted Cynthia for a running mate, and now Jesse wants Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
Well,
it's very confusing to me. I'm sorry. I just had to bring that up just as a.
I think it's perfect though. But yeah, Chad.
Well, as I said, the thing about Trump too is just a few years ago. I mean, he was highly respected. I mean, they talked a lot about him in rap songs. A lot of pop culture things, like his crudeness that was okay, but and that's where people don't realize, you know, what was made, how he was made. You know, with the Pied Piper strategy, what WikiLeaks revealed, and it was huge. The $1 billion, you know, into making him the boogeyman. They didn't just cheat in the Democratic primary; they cheated in the Republican primary too, in order to make him the nominee. That was their whole goal, and I don't think people, you know, understand, you know, how the beating of the fear drum and how they do that to gaslight and get people upset and outraged.
In my view, it sounds like you probably have a different theory about the rise of Trump. In my view, I think Trump was fighting both the Democrats and Republicans, right? I mean, nobody spoke against the neocon Republicans harder than Trump, right? And I mean, his campaign from everything, the economic
not
policy.
Since Ron Paul, not since.
Yeah,
Ron
exactly.
Paul.
No, you're right. You're totally right. Sorry, I and Pat Buchanan as well. So I'll put that there. And so they are kind of like third party people, really, right? I mean, Ron Paul is not really a Republican. He's a libertarian, you know, but he's just it's like Bernie. He's not a Democrat. He's a socialist, and he's just using the Democratic Party, right? And Trump was basically doing that. I think he fought both in just and there's this global spirit that I just love, and that sort of inspired my podcast. That there's this movement around the world, everywhere, in Italy, in the Philippines, in Russia, in Syria, all over the place, in the States, and people are seeing through the old right and left crap, and they're seeing like, this is where my interest lies, and I don't care what you call this person. I'm going for that because I'm just fed up, and I'm just seeing it over and over again. I to this day, I mean, Chad, if I were to kind of push back a little on you there, the whole Republican establishment is against Trump on the Syria withdrawal thing. They don't like him. I think they have caged him. I think he has not done what I wanted him to do. Although I love the language. He wanted to break up the G7. I'm all for that. Want to break up, the EU. I'm all for that. Want to break up the World Trade Organization, NATO. All for that. All for that for FBI, CIA for decades. I love that, but they're not going to let him do anything. Sadly,
I mean,
I hoped they did.
When John Kiriakou was on this show, he just immediately dismissed the notion of disbanding the CIA. I think it could be done, but it would take a lot of anger.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, those are the people you don't really want to be on their bad side. There's a way of, I would say, approaching the situation. But here's the thing with the voting, him being elected, I think is different, because I think there's a lot of fuck you votes to get Trump elected, and only
Michael Moore's analysis is awesome.
Well, only half the country voted. So there's the other thing, and with suppression and all the other mechanisms. So I understand that, but when I say the billions of dollars that were funneled into it, they had it all set up. That's why they wanted Trump, Ben Carson, or Ted Cruz, because they felt like they were going to be one of those three, going to be the easiest to beat. And it was Clinton himself, Bill, that urged.
Trump I see
run.
What you mean. See what you mean. They thought Trump was easy to beat.
So that's why they said, okay, let's pump into making him the boogeyman. And what happened when he was saying this real rhetoric that you're talking about, he's talking some real shit, even though he flipped, he said both sides of the coin, you know what I mean? That it resonated because people are tired of the status quo. And who was it said, it's one of those things that the country has to be really screwed up for people to think that Donald Trump is the vehicle for the change. So I understand that there's a lot of people that think he's the vehicle as far as to the anti-establishment, because there's a lot of people that say, I'm going to hold my nose for everything else because he's given it to the establishment. And indirectly, I would say that, he has taken the face off of it, because they're not going after him about the war crimes. They're not going after him the things that they could get him on easy, because it would implicate them. So that's why the little song and dance is still, to me, is a, it's political theater, it's wrestling, and if they wanted to put Clinton in jail, they could have put Clinton in jail.
Absolutely.
And it's something that they're dangling over the carrot on the stick with the Trump supporters. And for me, like I say, and this is, of course, my view, and because I'm trying to do a macro look, is I want to give encouragement to the people that share that sentiment of the anti-corruption. Because if we take out the corruption, it's going to take out the propaganda. We take out the propaganda, we can actually be well informed. We can have an honest conversation. And if the left, in this two-party, what we're talking about, left, right, said, okay, let's give up the Clintons. Let's give up Obama. Let's take them. Let's be anti-corruption. It would take 90% of the wind out of Trump's sails. It would actually move the country forward. But again, everybody's too focused on protecting their side because they're so afraid of the other manufactured side. So
it's kind of like, I think you're saying, like, if a sane person advocated Trump's policy, that would undermine Trump.
Right. Basically. Well, and the point is that anything that they do is they attach it to Trump. Like I said, the Clintons or WikiLeaks, they attach it, they make it as if even the things like you said that are actually good things. But and you're not even allowed to say that, because even if you acknowledge that the clock's broken, it's right. The broken clock's right.
Yeah, that's right.
You're still people are giving you shit because it's like you're a Trump supporter, or if
Yeah.
you're a Clinton supporter here. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a mind fuck, and
Yeah.
that's what's hard to get out of the loop, because the way
Now,
that they do is
what-
they make you
I'd be interested in what, especially since you're going for the Green Party, what do you think of Andrew Yang? I love that slogan he has, not left, not right, forward. I think that's cool. And he's going after Trump supporters and stuff like that. I think it's really interesting.
Jill Stein used to say that,
Oh, did he lift it from her?
They all lift it from everybody.
Yeah, they all lift. I don't. But Jill Stein said that like during the 2012 election. She didn't say that during the 2016 one.
Well, here's the thing. Is I'm all for the idea is you have to reach people at a base level. If we understand how the propaganda works, it's like cannabis. There's more people in jail for cannabis than all violent crimes combined. Blacks and minorities, 45 times as likely, even though blacks use the same rate. Well, the way they report that is like, look, there's more black people in jail, therefore black people must be more criminal. And then that's how they beat the fear drum. That's one of their mechanisms, the wordings that they use, riots, as opposed to, whites just letting off steam. These are little things that, that make people feel justified when their fear is brought out, whatever. So me understanding that, what was the question? I tried to, I veered off and got totally lost.
Jill Stein, I think.
Jill
Stein.
I think Jill Stein.
He brought up Andrew Yang and the slogan.
My point.
Not left, not right, but forward.
Right. Okay. Was trying to where it was going with this. Is that there are people with good messages and there are good things that we can be done. But again, it's the co-opting, it's the having, well, if you think that the two-party system is going to break the cycle, it's not. You have to have a third party come in and move the Overton window.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of, like some of these slogans and stuff are cool and they're they're hip, but they can only go so far because there's a line that they're not allowed to cross, because
so you're saying that Yang is inherently, he's got a ceiling, he's got a wall that he can't cross, there's a line. So
right. Well, I mean, even Sanders, Sanders is not focusing on the real problem, which is the corruption. If the corruption is stopping the everybody seeing from what the propaganda is, and dismissing certain things, and the impact of the influence of the media and the influence of how these people organize, because it's the top 1% that need that smoke and mirrors going. They got to lie to you in order to keep their power.
0.1% probably even.
Yeah.
But and I guess the same thing is true with Trump. Like in the sense that, I mean, partly it was his total lack of preparation, I think, because after he defeated everybody, he defeated the war machine, the military industrial complex, the big corporations and everybody in the election, the Wall Street, he just invited them in the cabinet. It was just totally insane, made no sense. I know there are a million theories as to why and what, he never meant to change in the first place and all that.
But look at even that. You see, everybody hated Jeff Sessions when he went in, and then they tried to rehabilitate him when he was out. Oh, they left you. Remember the Spicer guy? They fucking crucified him. The speaker, and then he came out and he was on that one award show, came out on the little thing, because Melissa McCarthy
That's right.
did that, and it was just like, oh, we love you now. We're you're okay now.
Ellen DeGeneres was sitting next to George Bush, and everyone thought that was amazing. Rosie O'Donnell saying, "Oh, I love to see George Bush now." It's just disgusting. I just want to throw up.
Well, and people are starting to see that, and now see. So I think I think that's the important part that we're supposed to be looking at, is because there's the part where people can come together. This is beyond the left and right that you were talking about right here.
Yeah.
It's the corruption. You take out the propaganda,
Yeah.
which I think that's what I was trying to get to with the cannabis thing, is because they use that propaganda to, just like they did it with the Muslim, just like they did it with the, the bathroom problem. You know what I mean? Like, people gotta use the bathroom. You know what I mean? They want to get you upset. Even just like they did with the Colin Kaepernick. It's like, you're allowed to be upset of how he did it, but let's talk about why. And even if you talk about why, it's the policies. Like in prohibition, alcohol, it's the same thing. That's, cops were getting killed left and right. The whole system that was created by having alcohol legal was crazy. So there's going to be that butterfly effect that's going to change, if just with cannabis.
I want to delve into just a little, because you brought up, refugee crisis in your country. Can you lament about that?
Yeah. Well, basically, it's an interesting thing because, well, if just on the pure issue, we're just 7.5 miles from Venezuela on the at our closest point, and there are two major points. But we're an island, and we don't really have much of a coast guard or no navy and whatnot. But Trinidad has been known ever since the 18th century, 19th century, the way of smuggling between countries and stuff like that. So things, goods, people, and whatever keep coming in here, and it's a huge problem all the time for us. And we've always had Venezuelans coming, but when this whole, Maduro issue and Guaido and stuff came up, it was just incredible. Boatloads of people, and a lot of this migrant issue stuff, whether it be from Africa to Italy or Gibraltar or whatever, or from Mexico into the States, or Central America through Mexico into the States, or Venezuela to us. These are human traffickers, right? It's organized. People can't just, a person from a village doesn't say, you know what, I'm going to go walk right through 7 countries and just hope I find a place, I find a boat to go somewhere, or I find, these things, they pay money for this. They're exploited all along the way. All sorts of horrors happen to them, rapes and what all sorts of stuff on the way up. They're totally exploited all the way from start to finish, and there are these people making tons of money just shuttling people across. So we have all these people coming across here, and now we ourselves have problems of violence here, gangs, and it is related to the huge drug cartels in South America, which of course are funded by the CIA and stuff, and that's known ever since Iran-Contra, and it's happened from way before that. Not saying that there aren't nefarious people here. Of course there are, but there's an international network. But yeah, but I mean, the Caribbean has a very, very high murder and crime rate, but Latin America and Central America even has a higher murder and crime rate. So there's a lot of fears on that, and we're a small island of we only have 1.3 million people. Venezuela's like, I can't remember the population exactly now, 27 million, I think, something like that. But I mean,
and yet my country is so irresponsible to try to smuggle more weapons of violence into there.
yeah. And I mean, and they're stoking this whole Guaido thing. So, and now what's happened in our country too is that with the death of people like Lloyd Best, my mentor, a lot of some of the greatest intellectuals and stuff after independence, and there's just a few of us, I guess, who are kind of carrying the torch. But although I did have a little stint in the Senate, I'm not a major voice anymore, but I am a voice. But the major voices are just worse than probably the Democrat and Republican or same kind of level. It's just a mess. So they're not thinking about these issues, which were so crucial. And at one point, I mean, one thing I do have to say, which I wanted to comment on with Chad about American politics, I find, looking from the outside, the way you guys have the two parties entrenched in your system, it's hard to believe. The fact that the state actually participates in the primaries for these political parties, because these parties are supposed to be private entities. They're not supposed to be state authorized bodies, right? But you know, the state machinery facilitates primaries and stuff, the way political parties choose the. So I mean, I don't know, to me it seems like to be a third party is just incredibly difficult in the States, whereas in our countries and stuff like that, you know, it's much more fluid. The state doesn't dictate, and so you can start a new party much easier, and so it's much more fluid. The States, it just seems so entrenched. I mean, it's a huge challenge for you guys.
And the
but
states
but
often.
the reason why I brought that up in our context.
Oh, the states are often complicit in election fraud as well, but.
That's right.
But yeah, keep going. I want to hear.
Yeah, because you know, when we became independent in 1962, we used American voting machines, and you know, throughout the world, as far as I know, we were like the only other country to use voting machines as opposed to paper ballots. And for about 15 years, until we got a new constitution in 1976, the opposition were just, I mean, that was one of their main things: get rid of these voting machines, because there were all sorts of documentation on how the votes were manipulated by the machines. And by, you know, there was a whole, we had like Black Power you know, revolts and revolutions and all this kind of labor union movements and all sorts of stuff around 1970, 68, you know, just like around the world. And their big thing was to get rid of these voting machines, and we did. So we're back to paper ballots. But yeah, I mean, the whole that whole thing of the state being involved, of the machines, for us, you know, the machines were like a symbol of electoral corruption. And outside looking at your guys' politics to see how entrenched these things are, it's really a daunting task. I think for third parties in the States, I really, you know, it seems so difficult, which is why, you know, a kind of Bernie strategy or Trump strategy of trying to infiltrate the parties, you know. So I mean, hats off to you, Chad, and the Green Party. But I think, you know, you've got this, you know, you've got this almost insurmountable, you know, challenge there.
Well, you know, and that's the thing. Like the Green Party, like there's, you know, the 4 pillars that are on the Green Party, and that's really what I, you know, connected to, which is, you know, ecological wisdom, justice for all, grassroots democracy, nonviolence. Those 4 things.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's something that everybody can kind of get under. Now, the Green Party has a lot of issues, internal issues, and it's no different from the Democratic Party. You have these little factions, but they have their people in place in order to make sure they direct the resources. Like now they got the one guy that they're trying to make the presumptive nominee. They're using the resources of the Green Party to actually make him the nominee.
Put the fix in, kind of.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're absolutely doing that. Like even for me, like they're preventing me from posting on the Green Party page. Like it keeps, like they have to approve
the Facebook
my thing.
group.
The main party Facebook group.
Yeah.
So so I mean, that's just one of the things that they're doing in order to do it. So my campaign I've been running on, the first thing is to identify the toxic behavior and then remove that from leadership. Because if you don't have a strong party, if you don't have a place where people can go, this is what we talked about, that people feel comfortable to have this discussion, where if you feel a certain way about something, that you can be against the Clintons and not have to be a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
To be, you see, but there's nowhere to go. There's no like real, you know. So I've been focusing on the internal part of you know, the structure, the foundation. But it's an uphill climb. But the beautiful thing, the first time in history, we have the internet, and we've never had this. So this is something that, you know, you could, like you say, take a little bit of what Bernie Sanders did, and as the media was blacking him out and smearing him, all that is evidence for the supporters. It made the supporters stronger, and you could see that's why it's making Trump supporters stronger, is because the things that they're hitting him with are the Russia, the bullshit. Like, so they're too busy defending the lies,
Yeah.
rather than having an opportunity to look at the other things because of what they're being hit on. So
Chad, I just wanted to interject real quick, but you brought up the internet, and Kirk is about to have the inventor of email on his podcast. I'm going to be sure to link to your podcast in the description.
Oh, very cool.
But the inventor of email, what's his name? Dr.
Shiva. Let me get his last name. I don't. It's a South Indian name that I'm not familiar with. Ayadurai. Yeah, Shiva Ayadurai. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. But yeah, with regards to the whole internet thing, you know, we're able to further understandings with this thing. It's really been great. I had another point, but I forgot it. But anyway, I forgot my point. So go ahead, Chad.
But I mean, one of the things about his story, in fact, is that he's been denied the probably the money, and but definitely the accolades due to him, because you know, I can't remember. You know, the military were doing something as well, right? So they're saying that what he did has nothing to do with email as we know it today. But he has shown that what he did as a 14-year-old, you know, with the inboxes and sent folders and all that kind of stuff, he did that, and he got the first patent, and he called it email and all this kind of stuff. So they had to kind of begrudgingly acknowledge it, but you know, but they're keeping the narrative and probably money aspects. I'm going to speak to him about it on my podcast. In that whole military-industrial complex kind of R&D, you know, funnel and channel they have there. But I know there's been a long battle he's had to be actually recognized for that. A 14-year-old kid from New Jersey, an immigrant. I mean, but you know,
he sounds much more brilliant than I.
Yeah, and his I don't know if you've been following his Senate campaign. He's running as a Republican, but he's like a total maverick. I mean, I'm sure you guys, I think you guys would connect with him on a lot of different levels. I mean, he, you know, and you know, his statement, if you see the statement on the website, you know, how we have to integrate the best of left and right, east and west, ancient and modern. And, you know, he's all about transcending all these fake boundaries. And, you know, he's a real, you know, iconoclast and, you know, anti-establishment guy, and he reaches out to on the left, on the right all the time, although he's nominally a Republican. It's a really great campaign he's got going. So I look forward to speaking to him on that. Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, that you brought up something too, like them trying to co-opt something. Just made me think is they need to have control over everything for the history for the history books, you know, because that's the big thing, that how they keep their power has to do with the reputation and the narrative, because they pass that down from kid to kid, you know. That's how they keep their you know, and that's why they want to control the internet now, you know. But it's important that we utilize it before any major any more damage comes, and be prepared.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
The question you ask yourself is, what are they willing to do to prevent themselves from losing the power?
I mean, they may even Alex Jones Jimmy Dore someday.
Yeah, well, they all. I mean, I was trying to put up an ad or something, or a post or something like that, and I wanted to target Jimmy Dore supporters, and it's not allowed. You know, it used to be, and then I got a message that it's not allowed. I mean, so they are going to they are demonetizing him. They're demonetizing specific videos. You can't target his supporters for paid ads or boosting posts, or it's slowly coming. And you guys seem younger than me. Definitely, I'm 50, by the way.
Don't look it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And
Wow.
when I grew, growing up in the 70s and 80s, it was like you just had the big networks, and if you needed to get this kind of information, you have to go to, like, tiny little bookstores here and there. Sometimes you have to travel to different cities to go to these special, if you'd go to New York or London, you'd get a lot more and stuff like that. But everywhere you might find a little bookstore, a little network, or sometimes you might subscribe to a pamphlet over the post. And so and it's only now, looking back with all the information coming out of the internet, you see how much was hidden from us, and things that I lived through in the 1980s and 90s. Like, I used to be a Clinton supporter in the 90s. And now, looking back at all this stuff that I did not know then, I realized that, wow, it's almost every problem in the modern age, whether it be NATO, Russia,
Right.
liberal imperialism, the repeal of Glass-Steagall, and casino capitalism, it all goes back to Bill Clinton.
You just brought a good point. Basically, our heroes, like, the heroes aren't our heroes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest steps that we have to take as a society, is to understand, okay, that you have to put the cultural things aside. And it's one of the things, like with Obama, that it's important, when you talk about it, the historical cultural aspect of having an African-American president is important, because it means something to the community, and it is important.
Although
to society.
I'd like to interject this here.
But I was just going to say,
yeah.
But at the same time, you still have to look at, the character and what a man's done. The 26,000 bombs, and 16 alone. Then you're 2 wars to 7. So when we have these conversations and debates, we should be able to separate, certain things.
But even on your first premise there, Chad, as the first African American president, that's true in a very technical sense, that his father is a Kenyan immigrant. But the most important thing is the historical idea that a descendant of an American slave has still yet to sit in the White House. People think they checked off that box, but they didn't. That has not been checked off as yet, right? The descendant of an American slave has not yet sat in
We
the
have
White
plenty
House.
of them here. Plenty of them.
Yeah.
And,
and he actually differed from Black America, historical Black America, in a lot of issues, because he's much more of mentally he's much more of a white liberal than he is a Black American.
He's an imperialist, and
yeah.
But the thing is the reason why I say that is because it's important to have that conversation, because of the emotions and the attachments that people have to these figures. It's like Jay-Z. People love Jay-Z, but he's state property. There's no such thing as a billionaire activist. There's no such thing as a billionaire activist. You get your head knocked off. You would never be able to touch $1 billion. Never.
That's right.
Never.
That's
so people don't
George
realize
Soros
that.
can never be a pro-Democrat.
Never. So people have to acknowledge that, and they have to apply the merits and what people say. When you say that Obama did everything he could, as president, you're lying to yourself.
That's
you know what I mean?
That's right.
First, and all these things happened under Obama. None of these things changed. The private prisons are still in place. I mean, they're paying people like cents for the day to fight the fires in California, while it costs $70,000 to house them. It's about directing the money. They don't want to fuck the money up, because then they're going to lose their position, and then they're going to lose. Then their kids are not going to be able to do this, and that's what people have to realize, is that their reputation, everything lies upon the smoke and mirrors. And if you, and that's the indirect that people like about Trump, is they feel like that Trump is going to really give it to him, but you can't,
because his Twitter feed is amazing.
Right.
Well, I mean? it's awesome. I mean, it's just...
and the comic, see, that's the novelty about it. People people are.
I gotta
Go ahead.
wonder if Kirk saw that tweet that said, "Look at this photograph."
No, well, I missed
Oh,
that one.
okay, but the photograph of Biden and his son with the Ukrainian oil people. So they put it as the Nickelback song. Look at this photograph. But they said that the sell of that song shot up like astronomical. They've been selling that song, but he shared it.
But Nickelback did a copyright strike on it. But
Oh, did they?
Oh, that's
They're
fucking
idiots.
hilarious. Look at this photograph. You know, and you know what? There's something that you don't hear a lot of people saying. I don't agree with, you know, Trump's policies. I agree with the anti-corruption. You know, like I said, like I don't believe he's the train, but I can agree with a certain sentiment. But I will have to say is that his supporters have a lot of fucking spirit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know, and this
that's
is the thing.
important.
You know, and this is the thing. You don't, you know, you don't to be a Trump supporter doesn't necessarily mean you like Trump, but if you don't like Trump supporters, you are against your countrymen, right? The fact is that Trump supporters are salt of the earth people, right? Just like, you know, Dems have salt of the earth people too. But and if you can't see, you know, which is one of the great things about Michael Moore's statement, you know, that it wasn't meant as an endorsement for Trump, you know, but it was used by some people to
they love to make
video.
Right.
Yeah, you know, but Michael Moore, because he started out really as an advocate for the working class, you know, he understands why, you know, I mean, me as a university educated person and stuff like that. I mean, I don't come from a privileged background, and so I do have my ties, but I'm also kind of in that, you know, university and political world as well. But my sympathy is always with the working class, and but, you know, first, the left has this idea of false consciousness. Oh, these people are voting against their interests. Oh, they don't know that they are really killing themselves, like Brexiters, for example, in the UK and stuff. No, I mean, you have to, you know, if you really understand working people, where they are, who they are, and I have to use this kind of language, if you love them for who they are, right? You will understand why they liked, you know, Ronald Reagan, even though I hated Reagan, right? You will understand why they like Trump or why they want Brexit, even if you may intellectually disagree with it. And so you might not like Trump as a person or whatever, but I mean, if you can't sympathize with a Trump supporter,
on a human
then that
level.
is civil war.
Well,
That just means civil war.
Well, and that's the thing. It's the humanity level. It's not to condone, you know, what people's action, but you have to acknowledge that that's the result of the policies that we all hate.
Yeah.
So you can't say, okay, I'm against this policy, and then not factor that into how you treat people, because everybody has their different, you know, timeline of evolution in the mind. So you have to find out and figure out where people are on that scope, and then give them information on that. And for me, I've argued with everybody. I mean, left, right, you know, as they say, whatever. And I've gone hard at Trump supporters, people that are my friends I grew up that I couldn't understand how they could. And, you know, then you see the people on the left. How can you support this? Yeah. And which gets me to the point where my consensus is that people have to pick a side. They're taught they have to pick a side. So if you have to pick a side, you're going to pick, again, the devil, you know, always. Yeah. And whatever it is, the little piece about them that makes you feel more comfortable, they're giving it to the man. Like, at least, you know, somebody's, you know, fighting for you somehow.
Yeah. Like Michael Moore said, who would bring in GE executive or GM executives and tell them, if you move this plant to Mexico, we're going to put a tax. Did he do that? I'm not sure he actually did it.
He brought Bill Clinton's accusers to the debate, didn't he? I mean, come on. Like, I mean, you know, again, it's like the entertainment value is crazy because I mean, it's fucking with people's lives, but but to see the
But
Trump
it's an
the
audacity.
well,
It's an
right,
audacity to like, just the middle finger to the whole system,
right,
and you just gotta love that. You just gotta love
well,
that.
right. That's what people want, and that's what people keep. But that's what keeps making people think that he's the vehicle, is
That's
because
right.
he's doing all these different things. Again, like, so to acknowledge that to a Trump supporter, and to say I don't agree with you, to have these debates, to say okay, I agree that the should be in jail, Obama should be in jail, to acknowledge that, again, like I said, takes the wind out of the sails, and it gives you an opportunity to have the discussion about
Yeah.
anti-corruption.
That's
Because
right.
if you're talking about deeds and action with these people, it's not about, well, what about him? Well, what the whataboutism doesn't have to come in, because you're
Yeah.
saying, okay, here's corrupt, here's bombing, here's selling weapons, to countries that are actually supporting ISIS. And that's what
Exactly.
WikiLeaks revealed, is
Yeah.
that Qatar and Saudi Arabia both gave $1 million to the Clinton Foundation, and it was right around the time they gave them
Yeah, and that is really something that I would definitely go down on Trump for. Man, Julian Assange, he has to be freed. I mean, even if you take Trump's narrow mentality, not the mentality that I like, but just saying, Trump is into loyalty, right? So, man, Julian Assange helped you big time, right? So I mean, if just on that alone, on Trump's ethics, that's means something. But for me, it's not because he helped Trump, it's because he exposed the lies of the military industrial complex and the whole system, and he blew it apart, and that's why he should be freed. But
I don't think he's going to do that, because it's going to reveal that he's not it's going to reveal that they cheated in order to make him. And the more people put attention on that, the more it can undercut his own thing in the long run, because now
I also think it has to do with the fact that he's a coward. During campaign season, he was like, oh yes, WikiLeaks, because his main opponent was being exposed as the corrupt little.
I mean, it got him elected. It literally got him when he was. I mean, he was talking about it, and that was the only place you're getting it from, was from Trump.
Yeah.
When you're mainstream, and that's why I have problem with Bernie. Is because he went along with this shit, and it's like, how can you support the same people that are giving you, that are building up, creating the person? Because just insert a different Trump here. Next time it could be somebody worse that's better at the smiles, which is what they say is the Democrats. They stab you in the back, but the Republicans,
the wolf and the fox,
they'll do it into your face. You know what I mean? Like,
they'll stab you in your chest.
Yeah,
right.
Let me give you a little observation from kind of third world politics and global politics in America. What I thought was amazing about Trump that makes him different, even from an insert Trump here kind of thing. I lamented during the Obama period how there was a kind of third worldization of the politics there, in terms of what I meant was getting away from sort of issues, sorts of things, and really focusing on this savior image, right? So you had all these things of Obama, and it was like, like a Che Guevara shirt, and it would be like Obama is like that status kind of, almost reaching there. It's like, and where it's just all iconic imagery and hiding all sorts of nastiness beneath, and just mindlessness, worshiping. But now Trump is a type of third world politics, on the other hand, that I love, and that I've never, ever, ever seen. It must have happened before in American history, but certainly not in contemporary American history or in Europe or where else. But it's still common throughout Africa, Asia, Latin America. That is, Trump could go from city to city to city and have fill stadiums of 20,000 people, have 40,000 people waiting outside. He would speak impromptu for like 4 hours. This is like Castro level stuff. And I don't mean that in a negative way, right? This is like a real bond between the leader and the people. And he loves them. That you can't fake that. You can't fake that for a year every day or whatever he did, something close to that. bring me up that baby. Let me see that baby. Oh, I love this baby. You know,
I mean, it
he
feeds his ego.
He genuinely loves them. They love him. That is unique. That is unique. And that has to, if you really love people, that has to move you. That has to touch you.
Well, and see, and let me make the example. Bernie Sanders, like the birdie burning. Do you see where that bird landed on the thing? That so emotional, and that whole time it was so different when getting involved, because it jump started a lot of people's political interest because of what was going on. You could see it in real, and I felt like there was such a cool bond happening. Even cats that weren't into politics, you starting to, the vibe was there, and it makes me emotional to think about it, because that's why so many people were pissed off, is because what your connection with your supporters, you screwed up. You said, screw you.
That's right.
I'm not going to follow. I'm not going to look at the evidence. I'm not going to, because I don't want to be Ralph Nader, which is the stupidest thing, because you were in the Democratic Party. You were cheated. It was proven. All these different factors. You would have been Bernie Sanders, because you would have beaten on the technical thing, and it would have changed the course. But he didn't want to do it. Whatever. We don't have to get in that. But what I think you're hitting on, though, is it's the social media influence. It's like what social media is doing with all the fake, the way that the propaganda that all these people do on Instagram. Like they have this crazy life, but it's just renting cars, and it's just the way that they angle stuff. And look, that's the point, is what people are realizing now about politics, is it's that same smoke and mirrors, and that people are doing it all day long now on Instagram. So it's easier to kind of spot that. So there's a real shift, I think, that's starting to occur, because influencing is down. Do you pay attention to Gary Vaynerchuk at all? Do you know?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that's something that he's been talking about, that the influencing is down. So that means that there's, which I feel like there is a shift, because you can't just show ass and tits all the time. You know what I mean? Like, which is what it is. Right. I mean, Instagram, for the most part, but that's like the biggest platform. I was just trying to tie in with that with Trump, because he's using what the Kardashians are doing, what they're using. It's public relations in order to get things going.
But I do think Trump has a real connection with real people. That is not a fake social media thing.
Right. I see what you're saying. No, I definitely think he enjoys the praise. His meter, he runs off of his ego. So that is, he's absolutely going to love. I mean,
but you brought up social media again, Gary Vaynerchuk, Instagram, and I mean, it's amazing how the internet was such a locus of freedom. I think I was probably the first academic in the Caribbean to ever use the internet in an academic paper. I remember the United Nations was having a conference, and this was the days before browsers existed. You had to go FTP, and everything was text-based and all that. And I remember I downloaded the papers, and I was writing things while the conference was going on in real time, and that was like mind-blowing, right? Because you used to have to wait like a year for the abstracts to come out and all that stuff. But and that was like in the early 90s, and it was just amazing. Like I told you, all the stuff you'd learn about what you lived through and was hidden from you, and now is available on the internet and all that. It was such an amazing sight of freedom. And now it's like it's becoming so Orwellian, like, so the way like the algorithms are like, channeling you here and there, and they're like, for me, I'm definitely shadow banned. My YouTube channel is shadow banned, because if you type my name and the exact title of my YouTube episode, I won't even show up, right? I was having like 30,000 hits on my video, and now I'm happy if I'm getting a few hundred now. It's terrible on the YouTube side, so the internet now is moving from this realm of freedom, which it once was, to this Orwellian type of control. And so, like, the way they, they ban content and allow other people on, and they use all these subtle ways to really control your mind and to think, you know, to control reality. Because if your search term, you know, gives up these top 10 results, to say, oh, okay, well, maybe these are the popular opinions. And then, you know, I realized that Facebook now, I can't remember what market somewhere, I think it's Australia, they stopped putting, I think, the number of likes on a post, because that was purposely done to make social media addictive and like gambling, like a game. So you put it up, oh, how many likes do I have? Oh, how many comments? Oh, and then other people can see it, so you're embarrassed. Oh no, his post got, you know, 3,000 shares. Oh God, what do I have to do? And it has this anxiety. So all these girls get nakeder and nakeder, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, who can show the most? Who can show the most without showing enough?
That's right. And it's been sucking you. And so not only have that, then we see that the CIA has been using, you know, this data now as part, you know, that's what Edward Snowden was revealing, how big tech, so this was now it was not Big Brother where they're looking in on you. It's the opposite of Big Brother. We're sharing everything, who all our friends are, what we eat, what we wear, where we go to, what time we do this, right? So we're voluntarily giving all our information to the CIA. It's so social media had turned from this amazing place of freedom to this intense locus of social control and censorship. And I wonder if it's actually going to start to move back to the big three, and everything's going to be controlled by Google, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, and they'll control all information, and it'll get back to like ABC, NBC, TBS, and that's it. And you can't know anything else besides what those big three tell you, just like how it was before. I don't know where everything is going, but I think that's a possibility.
Well, I don't know. I'm hopeful that we figure out how to use the internet before that, because it is the tool to do it. Because I mean, it's everything. It's like understanding our workforce is that we can make something and sell directly to consumer. We can cut out the middleman. If we need 5 other guys to make a product, you can find those 5 other guys, you know, create a co-op. And
That's
you
right.
know, a system, a company together. So it's just about, a lot of it has to do with framing the narrative, and that's what I've been learning. Like the process of running for president is to you know, I have to think about everybody, and like, okay, well, how can we set up certain things to where people can do it by themselves whenever, you know, but it's got to be the same principle, you know. So there's like, you know, the co-op, permaculture, you know, farming, and there's ways to bring people together, and using social media is, I mean, it is our weapon, our main weapon, and we don't have to kill anybody. There's no violence needed, and I think the argument is good. You know, I think it's been important for people to get out all this stuff, because, you know, sometimes you have to be an asshole to realize you're an asshole. You know, that you're thinking asshole. Like, you have to say something to be able to, wait a second, you know, my ignorance is built off this false, you know, building block of information. So that's, you know, getting back to the first thing, left versus right, is like, we need to be able to approach people, you know, and understand how the system uses their identity, uses culture, subculture to separate us. And we should be able to applaud and give merit to, you know, to different cultures. And which is weird thing with the whole the culture vulture thing, the whole what is it that they call it, it's when you cultural appropriation. Like, I mean, white people like culture. You know what I mean? So a lot of what white people do is they're experiencing culture, they're giving homage to it, but again, the way it's received and the way that it's been used, you know, obviously can be taken the wrong way. So there's a weird conversation, I feel like, that's not really being had,
Yeah.
because it's like one side, it's like, okay, well, we want people to embrace other cultures, but then when they embrace the other cultures, it's like we give them shit for embracing the other culture.
That's right.
It's like what it has to be 100 years, a couple hundred years before we're allowed to, eat pizza or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I know what you mean. I know
so,
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
just kind of bringing all that back into the, left versus right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I mean, the internet is an amazing thing to help us break down the left versus right. And I'm so, because I've been, I've been banned on Facebook many a time, for 30 days and all that kind of stuff, and on YouTube. And I'm very conscious. It's very real to me that this, I can be off. Who knows? I mean, I kind of think I work with in the back of my head that one day they're going to take me off, right? One day they're going to kick me out. And so what will I do then? I'm not exactly sure, but I lived before the internet. I guess I can live after the internet. You know what I mean? But yeah, I have a pretty dismal view about Zuckerberg and Sergey Brin and these guys. They're not out. Google's initial slogan was "Don't be evil." Now you guys are like the most evil corporation out. Come on.
Well, and then there's, again, it goes back to the thing, like Facebook, like the idea is good. Like Google, the idea is good. The principle, Twitter,
Love it.
It's great. But when it gets co-opted, when these things are being used and being in order to social engineering, and that's what it is. I mean, it's like Instagram. It's like, you don't think that they could have a bunch of people put in jail for what they're showing on Instagram? Absolutely. Right. But the black exploitation is what in this country is so crazy, because they utilize the black culture is the currency. The Kardashians use it, all these people use it. And I mean, same thing, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So people, this is it's hard trying to reveal themselves, like the Matrix. How do you get out of the Matrix?
But I think a good point to talk about here and to introduce is Tulsi Gabbard, right? Because again, I think kind of like Andrew Yang, like Bernie, like Trump, and if you want to go before, like Ron Paul or like Pat Buchanan, or I don't know if Nader
Ross Perot
crossed over so much. Who else?
Ross Perot.
I think Ross Perot did cross over a lot, but I think he kind of stayed a lot more on the right than crossing over to the left. Like Nader probably stayed more on the left than crossing over. But there are, I think Tulsi's another great crossover kind of person, and this time it's coming from the Dem side, but they're trying everything against her. They're really trying everything against her.
I mean, not even Bernie has come out, in support of the First Amendment and Julian Assange.
Yeah.
And freedom of press.
And he doesn't seem to be, standing up for Tulsi. And she, she stood up for him in 2016 and she resigned and everything for him. And
just as she stands up for Assange now,
Bernie's not looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie's not looking good in this.
and that's one of the things that I want to pitch too, because like breaking the two-party system, you have to have a third party. So I could pitch it to the left. Hey, when they cheat Bernie, when they cheat your people, you're going to need to put it to them. And the best way to do that is to have somebody on deck that says, fuck you, come day one, all these people are going to jail. You want to scare the shit out of them. And then you do the same thing for the Trump supporters. Say, hey, let's give Trump a certain day. Put these motherfuckers in jail. Either you do or they don't.
Yeah.
Come first day, the Clintons are going to jail. So put Trump on notice. Apply pressure, and it's still the primary. People can do that. People can add their voice. So that's one of the one of the ways that, again, some of this stuff caught fire. People would be so about it, but then to know that the media and how they come in, and the smear campaign, which I'm all for it. I'm ready for it. I'm excited about it, because that's how you know that you're actually doing something. When and that's why I know the Green Party's working when I'm doing there too. Because I mean, I'm literally calling these people out that are toxic, people that are co-chairs, people that, I mean, you have a media director for 18 years. What kind of media do you know about the Green Party? Nothing.
Yeah,
When's the last time you see
exactly.
it? When's the last time you remember any video, anything that went
Yeah,
viral? Never. 18 years.
exactly.
These people are
Yeah,
getting paid. They're
yeah.
making
They
sure that
suck at memes. They really suck
they
at.
suck. I mean,
Yeah.
the organization of the whole thing has been
Yeah.
it has and how do you bring people into a party that doesn't give a shit about how they're representing themselves and that are allowing certain people to be in these positions that they may not be doing necessarily something legal, but I mean, open the books, let's see if you are doing something legal.
Yeah.
But the way you treat people like
Do
gatekeepers.
you think that's a generational thing within the Green Party? Like, my idea from the outside, right? You're on the inside, you know it, but my guess would be that there's probably a tension between the kind of old hippies and the millennials, and and that there's probably like a lot of old hippie Greens, and they might be sitting in these positions. Like media advisor, maybe. I don't know who the person is, so maybe I'm totally wrong. But they're not savvy with this internet stuff and memes and dank memes and all that kind of stuff. But they're in the positions because of that, they're boomers or whatever. And then the young side that that's being lost. The potential is not being capitalized because of that.
Well, I mean,
Is that something?
well, partly, but the problem is too is that they cheat. They no different from the Democratic Party,
Yeah.
and the way that they do it is they throw their title around, they throw their weight around, they talk
Right.
down to you.
And
They're-
that's not a
they're-
generational thing.
No, well,
That's not
because there's young cats in there because they get in
Yeah.
line. That's
Yeah.
again, that's the whole ideology.
Yeah.
Is get in line. It just like schools, and the
Yeah.
people that go for these positions are people that, especially, it's like they could never make it in the big boys team, so they have to come and
Yeah.
feel like they're like really cool in this. But again, like you were media director for 18 years, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all these things, and there's no presence, and the party has less. There's kids on YouTube that have more followers than the party, and
That's
and
right.
then so the guy that was there, the initial beginnings of the Green Party, whatnot. He's the one that's trying to make the presumptive nominee. Even WikiLeaks is showing him as the founder, which he's not, because this has been being put together. So there's a lot of these, again, how they use their influence. One lady tried to attach my logo to the Nazis' eagle. They're like, why did you use an eagle on your logo? I'm like, and then like, why did I use it? It's the national bird.
Exactly.
She says, I know it doesn't look like it, but it's close. Like, why would you choose that?
That's kind of like when people use the fallacy, oh, Nazis, they have socialist in there.
Yeah. Or people say the American flag is racist. I mean,
Right.
the left has gone to that extreme. I mean, I know from being outside outside of the States, people are anti-American.
If you're talking about like what it's doing, you could say that, because if the flag, it represents the country, and the countries are doing these racist things policy-wise, then that you could say that that's representing. So it's all about how some people look at what it's supposed to represent. So again, that comes down.
I'm not about a piece of fabric. I'm about the people.
Well, and that's my point, is that what they use their influence. She's like, well, I've been in the Green Party for this long, and I've never seen something so militaristic or whatnot. And it's just like, it's like, so. And I said, what if you would have done a 30-second Google search? And she's like, well, I don't have time to do this research you're asking. I'm like, but you gave me 2 or 3 paragraphs, told me, acknowledge it doesn't look like it, but you want to sit there and throw you being a longtime member as if, let's try to attach this guy to white supremacy in order. And that's the kind of stuff that they do. And another guy, they're like, well, what are you doing? Can you phone bank? I'm like, phone banking. That's their big thing. You want me to phone bank? There's a system. You could enter all the numbers in, and they'll text everybody.
Exactly.
Or robocall. First of all, if you're calling if you're calling landlines, there's a problem with how you're thinking.
Exactly.
Right? Like so
that's like 1980s.
Right, exactly. So they shame you there, they shame you here, and God forbid that you have any real concerns or criticism of somebody that happens to be a person. Now you can't say person. I don't know what you could say. Whatever. Somebody that's not white and that's
Yeah.
not a male. You know, you're hit with the identity politics. And
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that's the way. You know,
yeah.
if not up to date with you know the cancel culture's
Yeah,
mood that day, then you're in trouble. So
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know, but
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, because that.
as
Yeah,
far as
sorry.
as far as I'm concerned, heart that beats, digestive system, same species. I really don't like tribalism. I've never been too hype about it. Yeah, I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah. But I know I'll tell you something here now, and this is from a global perspective. For anti-imperialists around the world, nationalism has always been important, right? And it's very curious for us because nationalism has always been the tool against imperialism. It's been the liberation of us from imperialism, and so it's nationalism in Africa, Asia, Latin America, Caribbean. It's not a dirty word. Every political party has national in it. Has it might have nationalist in it or national, because it's a whole struggle from away from French colonialism or British colonialism or Dutch colonialism or whatever it was a national struggle. And so we all sort of recognize that. So it's quite amazing to see in Europe and America, and I know it's because of the whole Nazi thing and whatnot, but they beat up over the term nationalist, whereas for most of the world, for most of humanity, there's nothing wrong with you wanting your country to be to wanting the best for your people. That's fine. And that, you see, it's because I think, especially being formerly colonized people, we always had this global awareness that there were these global forces that were suppressing our national aspirations, our national prosperity, our and so forth. And so it's always been like nationalism versus globalism versus imperialism, and
team politics. It's the tribalism that
yeah,
that is, it's just one way that they make you feel like
yeah,
you have to be a part of your tribe, which like you say, if you're a part of your team, you want to have pride in your team,
yeah,
but you can't pick and choose when you want to have pride in the team. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Without having the conversation of what you
Yeah,
need to change about the team, because
yeah,
everybody wants to sweep the dirt under the rug, hold their nose, don't talk about it, as if nobody else sees it going on.
right,
And
right.
that's
Then there's that unhealthy part. Like, I mean, I don't know how much you have read George Orwell or stuff. I love Orwell, and one of his most important essays is called The Lion and the Unicorn, and it's about England, and basically, in the end, he it is a long thing about socialism and England and stuff, and he says, he is a socialist, but England is his country, and he loves England and the English people, and that was a big theme in something like 1984, like ideology over people, and you see, I was looking at the difference historically and thinking in philosophical terms now. Ideologies are very recent invention. Like about the Jacobins in the French Revolution, right? Now, in English history, there's something called I believe it's the Jacobites, right? And I wonder what's the difference between the Jacobites and the Jacobins, right? And I was looking that up and stuff, and then I realized that the Jacobites, they were for a particular lineage to succeed in the throne, and that's all. It wasn't an ideology. Now, I was going back to sort of Islam and Shia Islam versus Sunni Islam, and looking at the whole question of global Islam, and I was trying to figure out, what's the difference between Shia and Sunni, and I'm thinking in terms of, like, the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism or something, where it's some split in idea, but it's actually not in Islam. It's actually the Shias believe that this person, I can't remember, Hassan or Hussein or something, should have succeeded Muhammad, and the Sunnis believe somebody else, the daughter or something like that. And so it's based on and I realize that in human history, it is so natural and in fact very human for you to identify with a group. In fact, I mean, I thought about this a lot philosophically, and I think the highest human virtues are things like bravery, courage, honesty, truthfulness, these sorts of things. And you can never, in the liberal ideology, and I mean liberal in its historical sense, right? So the sort of idea that came up from the 18th century, 19th century of this individual who had free rational choice and was not constrained by any tribe, right? So this kind of rationally choosing individual. Now, in that ideology, where you're not attached to anything except your own interests at the time, and you're calculating it, you can't express those highest virtues, right? You can only express courage, and when you're part of a tight-knit group that you are bound to. And I think this is one of the things that I think is a danger in America, in European politics, that there's no underlying identity or glue for the country anymore. And there needs to be this solidarity that, despite the fact that you're a Democrat and you're a Republican, or you're this or you're that or you're that, listen, we love this place, we love this country, we love our people, we want this place to do better. So we can put aside these disagreements. They may be fundamental, yes, but come on, we know we want this place to be great again, But I mean, because when Trump was before UN, there's a couple of speeches he gave. The last one was amazing, and the first one he gave was amazing. When he talked about nationalism being the greatest defense against, I can't remember what he said, if it's globalism or something else, but democracy. It's true, because I studied anthropology and stuff, and I used to lecture anthropology for a long time. The human mind, human beings, for most of history, hunters and gatherers in small bands of about 100 people, which is why we can basically only recognize 100 faces and names. And after that, it becomes anonymous numbers, and it becomes a machine and a cog, and all the ills of modern society, in my view. Right? But at a personal face-to-face level, which is one thing I love about living in a small island community and stuff, because I've lived abroad in different countries, but I love face-to-face communities. And it's just human. It's really human. And it goes down back to this thing that you have a real human connection with people. And that I think that in modern automated corporatist society, it seeks to eradicate that. And we need to capture that small scale humanity, which is one of the great things about America, is that although it is so urban, most people, like, okay, New York is like, what, I don't know, 14 million people or something. LA is like a similar amount. But, then you have Chicago is what, like, I don't know, 1 million or 2 million. But, after those mega cities of New York and LA, after that, it's like 1 million people, 500,000 and whatever. So most people in America still are living in smaller communities. And I think that's a great thing that I think is being destroyed by corporatism and neoliberalism. You see, this neoliberalism, that's what happened by the corporations that started imperialism. It wasn't nations. It was the East India Company, a corporation, the world's first corporation and most evil and most powerful corporation in the world. What they did throughout the world has not yet been fully acknowledged. And they have hollowed out and destroyed so many countries that were some of the richest in the world, in China and India and elsewhere. And you know, these corporations survived, even though the East India Company was destroyed in 1857 in India in the mutiny. They survived as as Lehman Brothers, as the biggest banking, as big pharma, the Rothschilds and all of them. They're still out there, and they're still doing the same things. And now what they did to hollow out Asia, which was the world's richest economy, they're doing it in America, they're doing it in Europe. They're hollowing out the middle class. They're making super rich and a super poor. And then they're flooding in the place, just like, you know, okay, I'm of Indian descent. I'm in the Caribbean. How did I reach there? How did our community reach here? It was indentured labor that brought us here. How did black people reach here in the Caribbean? It was slaves that were brought here, right? They were doing this throughout the rest of the world before, and now they're doing it in America and Europe as well. They're bringing in people just for labor, right? They're telling you, oh, diversity and all this kind of stuff, but it's pure exploitation. It is pure exploitation. And, you know, and if you know, let's say white people in the States, express their revulsion in ways that might seem racist or whatever. But I can understand in the sense that, listen, you know, your community is not what it was. There's nothing wrong with you wanting your community to be what it traditionally was, you know. So there's a bit of sympathy I can have.
Well, there's
the other stuff.
But see, the thing is, people don't have they have no problem saying that there's some sort of psychological issue going on right now in white men, white America. So if you could acknowledge it there, you have to be able to acknowledge it in all these other situations.
That's right.
And that's like, for me, is I have to walk back a lot of things for me. I grew up in the South from Tennessee, you know, so it wasn't until I moved, you know, I moved to Miami when I was 25 that I had this, you know, learned about Latin cultures, and I spent a lot of time with Jamaicans and Haitians, and it was a culture shock for me.
Yeah.
And it made me realize my prejudices, my ignorances, and the things that I had no idea, I was just oblivious to, because the base culture is white.
Yeah.
So when people, and it's not like I ever felt, because I never felt like, you know, like worried like of other cultures or anything like that. For me in Miami, being the white guy was amazing. Yeah. You know, so I had a different thing. It wasn't till later on, even after, you know, afterwards, that to you know, for me to understand that my experience as a white boy going into these things was different. It was different still. So, you know, it was just a huge learning experience, because I met a lot of cats that never dealt with white people, and you know, suspect of me, you know, everybody thought I was a cop. Like by no means, I'm like smoking like, yeah, sure. But
you see, like you talk about growing up in Tennessee and having certain prejudices, but you know, that's so human, because it's everywhere, right? Because in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in India, right? I mean, anybody who lives in a, you know, in a community that's been around for a long time, has a certain culture, they all have this thing about outsiders, and you know, and there's nothing evil about it. It's a natural thing, and once you can understand the impulse about it,
the human nature about it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the approach that we're supposed to take, and when we're talking about left versus right kind of thing.
If you would allow me to interject real quick.
Okay, I was just going to say that
this big, come here. So this big baby won't stop, you know, harassing me for a walk. So I'm gonna have to do that real quick.
Yeah, I realize we have been going for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do. I do need to cut it short here just a minute. What were we just saying before?
About the naturalness of the community and culture.
The conversation is I was saying that the liberal left, whatever, is supposed to be the ones that are more open, right, to cultures.
Yeah.
But they're very umbrella blanketish over the right and conservatives. Everybody's racist. Everybody's
that's right.
This thing, without understanding the sentiment that some people have, even if they're supporting someone you don't agree with. But they don't see their bias. You know, again, supporting the Clinton, supporting the DNC when they're okay with the corruption. You know, but I think it is the approach is so important, and then we have to look at it at the human level to say, okay,
Yeah.
here's these cultures, and here's the beautiful things about the cultures, and here are the issues with the cultures that are something that occurred because of the propaganda, because of these different things. And if we don't approach it that way, and teach people how to look at somebody, how to read somebody, like, hey, this person's like, 4 miles into the 10-mile trip to being unbrainwashed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of uh, that thing where you're trying to tie people together.
Yeah.
I think it's becoming more and more possible as the face gets ripped down. And that's what I said, Trump, I don't believe Trump's good directly. I said I think he's good indirectly, because it's what it forces people to have to come to terms with certain things. And again, I don't agree agree with his policies, even though his policies he's flipped back and forth on a bunch of stuff. I will absolutely say that anything you say about the Clintons, I'm inclined to inclined to agree. You know what I mean? So Trump, those two things aren't mutually exclusive from each other. So which is, again, that's a big part of the problem, is that you're attached. Anything you say is attached to the person who said it first, or the side that said it. So no matter what, you're I mean, that's how. Go ahead.
I think I learned it from Camille Paglia first in the 90s. Because I used to be like very much on the left, and the really, really radical left and stuff. And I always thought of myself as independent minded, but there was a line I wouldn't cross. Like if I thought someone was right wing or conservative, and I said, there's no way. And then, I mean, a couple things changed me. Like one, when I realized the richness of conservative thought, and I just thought, oh my God, my whole education career has been hiding some amazing thinkers from me, and so that was one thing. But another, I remember in the 90s, like Camille Paglia would, be talking about certain Republicans she liked and stuff, and I was like shocked. And but I said, wow, now she really is independent, because she'll go anywhere, left, right, whatever. And I said, wow, I think I've got to be like that. And I do think that people have to get out of the fear of because this is part of the fear of the ideology of saying, oh, you're a Trump supporter. Oh, you're Putin's puppet. Oh, you like Duterte or whatever, right?
It's like Rogan. Joe Rogan does it masterfully, and he gets branded right wing all the time. When he definitely doesn't consider himself right wing.
That's right, exactly.
But it's so important to see you have these discussions, and I'll say it in a religious way, because I grew up. My dad's a Pentecostal preacher, and like I grew up so extreme in that way. So I was at church camp, and there was a chick that got caught with cigarettes in her stuff. They went, found cigarettes, and they were going to send her home. So my counselor said, well, if you send her home, then I'm going home too. You're going to send the people home that need the influence the most.
Exactly.
So
it's exactly what Jesus said, right? He came for the sinners.
Right. If you're not, creating a way, a path for people to have those discussions, to have those conversations, or to listen, because again, even if that fear's wrong because it was built off propaganda, it's still legitimate for them, their feelings, because they were lied to. So if you can acknowledge, okay, well, they lied to you, then you don't have to be so upset and emotional at the output. We have to think of it like criminal minds are, the approach, break down the way people think, break down, and then once you start seeing that, you start seeing in yourself, and then you start seeing the nuance and the theme, the pulse.
Exactly.
And then you find ways to say, okay, well, shit. Yeah. We cut out that propaganda, that corruption. A lot of this shit can fall into place. I mean, I believe
that's right. Exactly.
And I'm willing to try that. I'm willing to say, let's all focus on getting rid of corruption and propaganda, and if we can't get shit together, then whatever. Go back, whatever. Shit. But,
well, good luck to you, man. Good luck.
So Kirk, is there anything you want to say to close out this show?
I mean, it was a great conversation. Great to be in touch with you guys and make this connection. I look forward to keeping it up. But yeah, I think that this, and as we said, part of the internet, it's really important. This is like I mean, you call it evolution, revolution. This is a revolution that's happening right now. We're breaking down the types of thinking that has kept us apart and that has allowed the whole divide and rule strategy ever since the days of colonialism and imperialism, which is now coming home to the imperial countries themselves in America and Britain, and it's now sort of eating you guys up too. And I think there's so much solidarity, you know, between our countries and movements that we should be getting together. We should be breaking down these barriers and not thinking about right and left, and really see through all the ideological crap and see what are the issues, you know. Or do we stand for peace? Do we stand against neoliberalism and the destruction of people's livelihoods for corporate profit, you know? And then let's stand with those people no matter how they are labeled, right? And because we have got to make a new kind of movement to push this forward. And I think the establishment realizes that's actually being done, and that's why they're pushing back so hard. So I'm grateful for these connections. This, for me, it's not just an intellectual thing. It's a real movement thing.
Thank you very much for coming on, Kirk. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.